Okay, so here we are with a chip and dip platter that has started to dry, and it's about what I call leather hard, maybe a little beyond that. So the first thing I want to do is define where I'm going to put the design. So I do these little banding lines. So I put the pot on here, get the wheel going. And this is really also a good way to sort of clean up the pot, because it's really hard to get see there's a little bit of not real even coverage right here where I have the slip over the pot. So let's clean that up first. The inside looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to use a more narrow trimming tool do the inside. This also helps undercut where the bowl meets the plate, so you trim away a little bit of that excess clay as well. Okay, so I'm going to do oops, make sure this is centrifugal here, it's perfectly centered. And then I'll do a line here. Do one outer one. I'll do one more up here. And I'll do the inside. Do one here. Try to hold the tool real steady. You might have to brace it with the other hand. Do one here. A little bit right here. Oops, I didn't brace this that well. That's good enough. Get rid of all these little trim parts here. Now here's a real important tip for this particular kind of form. Anytime you do a form that has a middle piece and an outer piece, there's significant push and pull as it's drying and as it's firing. And sometimes if there's trapped moisture in the clay, that's what makes it crack or explode. So that is a real critical part right there where that bowl meets the platter. So while it's leather hard in this stage, I'm taking my needle tool and I'm going to poke a hole all the way through, right there, on both sides, so two sides. That way it has sort of a little steam hole for moisture to escape. It's kind of the same principle as popcorn. That's what makes popcorn explode, is the moisture that's trapped in the kernel. It turns to steam and poof, there it goes. So this little trick has saved a lot of chip and dip platters. And then after it's misfired, I mean, you could just rub a little glaze in there and then, glaze the whole thing and nobody ever notices it and sees it. So it seals right up. So that's ready. Now, oops. Oh yeah. So now here's one that's a little dry. You want to let that, after you do the banding wheels, let it dry a little bit more before you do the carving. Now here's a pot where I've started to, I just use a chopstick to kind of draw out my design. Did the little flower parts earlier, so I'm just going to add some leaves and stems here. And then these little tools are great. They have them up in the studio. They're just these little metal trimming tools. And they're wonderful for, here we go, for doing this carving. I like to use this little round one, that way you don't get real sharp edges as you're trimming. And it's best to let the pot dry pretty dry. It's hard. It's very easy to gouge the clay if it's too moist or too soft. For instance, here's a pot that's pretty dry, and I started carving this morning, and you can just get a lot cleaner carving. So here's one I've already sketched the design. Another really nice thing about this little round circle one, if you have any little dots, this is a great tool for that. You just set it where you want and just twist it. And you get these perfect little dots. There. So that's that pot. This one, I think it might be a little, yeah, it's still a little bit too moist, and it's really easy to gouge the clay. And I don't want to do that. I want to wait till it's pretty close to dry, the way that is, and that way you're not digging into the pot that much, and you get a real nice clean design. Because all you're basically doing is you're just scraping away the blue slip. That's the whole idea. And then you are getting into the white clay, and so that way you get this really clean design at the bubble. And it's fired. Once it's you finished carving it, just let it dry and bisque fire it. After it's bisque fired, you wax the bottom, and like I say, just dump the whole thing in clear glaze, high fire it, and you're done.